A lot of people said the Nintendo Direct on Tuesday was kind of boring and the games announced weren't really all that exciting, but, for some people, I think the Nintendo Direct was actually pretty awesome. Let's talk about it. I watched the Direct live right here on my YouTube channel. We had a blast. If you want to join in the fun next time, please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so YouTube notifies you next time I go live. I personally really wasn't super excited about this Direct while I was watching it live, but thinking back on it, Nintendo really did announce a lot of games, and there's some really good ones in there. If you're a fan of rhythm games, you got Just Dance 2023, and this is a really strange one, Fitness Boxing, Fist of the North Star, Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line, which is kind of like a Guitar Hero style game but with Final Fantasy music instead. It said something like hundreds of different tracks to play, and that's pretty wild. I remember saying something about having over 300 songs to choose from, and then some DLC that can set that over 500, which is a crazy amount of songs, to be honest. If you're a fan of JRPGs, this Direct was definitely for you. They announced a ton of different RPGs, including a brand new Fire Emblem game called Fire Emblem Engage. I know, it's been a long time since we had a new Fire Emblem game. They also announced Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Reunion, Tales of Symphonia Remastered, which is actually originally a GameCube game, and oddly enough I'm hearing that the GameCube version plays at a locked 60 frames per second, but for some reason this remastered version only plays at 30 frames per second. Seems like it probably could use a little bit of optimization, but 30 frames per second is definitely playable. If you're into tactical RPGs, they announced remakes of the first 3 Front Mission games, which is really cool because Front Mission 2 and 3, from what I understand, never made it to the US. They're going to be coming out later on. But it's really cool that we'll finally have these games. Square Enix announced the sequel to Octopath Traveler, very creatively titled Octopath Traveler 2. Now, I said that this should have been called Octopath Traveler. And then there was one more RPG they announced. It was called Various Daylife. From what I understand, it was an iOS game that was on Apple Arcade that's now being released on the Switch. If you're a fan of games like Stardew Valley, there was actually 4 farming sims that were announced at this event. First we have his Fae Farm, which is kind of like farming mixed with magic. Next, they announced a remake of the game Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. This is actually going under the title Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life, and it's a combination of both A Wonderful Life and Another Wonderful Life, which were separate games that you could play as either a male or a female character, but this is just going to be compacted into one game. This is one of the Harvest Moon games I did not get to play back in the day. It was originally on the PlayStation 2 and then on the GameCube, and I'm kind of excited to play this one. Another farming sim on this list is Rune Factory 3 Special, which is a remaster of Rune Factory 3. Rune Factory is actually made by the same people who make the Story of Seasons games, so it's a lot like Story of Seasons, except it includes fighting monsters as well. Harvestella is a game by Square Enix, and it's kind of a mix between a farm sim and like a Final Fantasy game. You'll go through the seasons farming crops and interacting with the townspeople, but in this game there's a 5th season called Quietus, which they call the Season of Death, where all of your crops die and monsters start popping out of nowhere and you have to battle these monsters. It's kind of an interesting concept, and hopefully we'll hear more about it soon before it comes out in November. The last game in this category is less of a farming sim, more of a management sim. The game's called Factorio. In this game you kind of mine for resources and design factories and automations to keep things moving. This game's been around for a little while on other platforms, but it comes out next month right on the Switch. They announced some new Nintendo 64 games coming to the Nintendo Switch Online service. We got Pilot Wing 64, Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, 1080 Snowboarding, Excite Bike 64, and the biggest announcement for the 64 games is GoldenEye, coming to Nintendo Switch Online with online multiplayer, which is absolutely wild. I heard that there's also a version coming out for the Xbox that's going to include 4K support and achievements, but will not have online multiplayer support, which is kind of a weird choice. They announced some upcoming DLC at this event, including Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Expansion Pass Wave 2, including a brand new character, Mario Strikers DLC that has new characters and some new armor, which, to be real, this stuff should have been in the game originally. A lot of people are really kind of disappointed in how that game came out, but that's a completely different video. And lastly, they announced the next wave of tracks for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I tried to break down everything from the Direct into categories, but that was kind of difficult for this list of games, so I just left this as uncategorized. First we have is Ib, which is kind of an interesting game where you're going through an art gallery and you get kind of trapped, and it has a real spooky vibe to it. Master Detective Archive's Raincode is a long title for a game that actually looks pretty interesting. You play as this detective that's followed around by this kind of ghost character called Shinigami. And as you progress through the different investigations, a new realm called the Mystery Labyrinth comes up that kind of leads you towards the truth. Really interesting, really cool, comes out next year. SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake looks pretty cool, and if it's anything like the previous platformers, it should be a lot of fun. Oddballers is kind of like a dodgeball style game. There's really not much more I could say about it, but it does look like a lot of fun if you get a lot of people together to play. From what I understand, Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is a game that's been out in Japan for a while and just never came to the US. We'll see a remastered version of this game coming out in 2023. Tunic is a game that looks like it definitely belongs on the Switch. This Zelda-inspired game is a lot of fun, but pretty difficult at times. They had a little bit of info for Bayonetta 3, which I kind of predicted in my video up here. They didn't show a lot, but it is coming out next month, so it makes a lot of sense for them to talk about it at this Direct. If you're a fan of Nintendo Switch Sports, you'll be happy to hear that golf is coming, but you'll be sad to hear that it is actually being delayed. It's supposed to be releasing this fall, but now we'll be releasing this holiday instead. It Takes Two is getting a release on the Switch, and to be honest, the video footage they showed here is a little bit rough. On the Xbox version that I played, it looked really great, but I definitely understand why this doesn't look as great on the Switch. The one upside though is that it will have the free friend pass, so if you're playing in the same room as somebody else, they don't also have to own the game to play it, which is actually really cool. A game that kind of came out of left field was Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which is a remaster of the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Wii. Kind of a really cool looking side-scrolling Kirby game where you're going to play as 4 players, co-op. Definitely looks like a lot of fun. Some Resident Evil games are coming to the Switch. Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 7 as cloud versions. It's kind of sad that they have to be cloud versions. I know the Switch isn't really a super powerful system, so it'd be kind of hard to kind of shoehorn these games in on the Switch, but cloud versions are a little annoying because you never really own the game. You have to stream it, so it means you have to have an internet connection. So if you take the Switch up with you in like the car or on the go, you really can't play these games. At some point in the presentation, Shigeru Miyamoto came out on the screen and started talking about a Pikmin mobile game, which was absolutely crazy because you'd think if Shigeru Miyamoto was coming out on the screen that, it was going to be some actual big announcement. But after the mobile game, they did announce that Pikmin 4 is an official game. It's being worked on, hopefully to be released sometime next year. I felt pretty strongly that they were going to announce Pikmin 4 at this event. I know the last time that they even talked about it was back in like 2017 when someone kind of vaguely mentioned that Pikmin 4 was kind of still alive and still in production. But now we have an official announcement that this is an actual game being developed and that it's coming out pretty soon. And finally, the last game that was talked about at this Direct, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We also got a release date of May 12th, 2023. I'll talk more about the announcement in this video right here, so go ahead and click on that to see more. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.